parts of your life do you consider to be private? This is the story of how I discovered a phenomenon in the technology we use every day, which is quietly changing your answer to that question. Last year, I was one of the 1,000 lucky people accepted into Facebook's summer engineering internship program. As a computer science student at Harvard, the story of how Mark Zuckerberg founded Facebook was legendary on our campus, and getting the opportunity to work at his company was a dream for me, to say the least. I was excited to be working at a place that was described by the founder as a hacker culture, where code wins arguments. I figured that in the spirit of this hacker culture, I could impress my future employers by writing some code to start a discussion about a feature on Facebook that I found a bit invasive, and I thought other users might as well. Before this past summer, Facebook Messenger's app attached your location to every message you sent from your mobile device by default. So I figured that why not write some code to start a discussion about this and possibly uncover if this was an issue that was actually affecting users. Surprisingly, I found that by aggregating and plotting the location data my classmates were sharing through Messenger on a map, I could track them as they moved around Harvard. Now, being a pretty big Harry Potter fan, I couldn't help but notice that this was eerily similar to one of Harry's magical tools called the Marauders Map, which let Harry track his friends as they moved around Hogwarts. So this inspired me to create the Chrome extension Marauders Map, which users could download to map location data from their own Messenger feeds. In the spirit of code-winning arguments, Marauders Map made the data Facebook was already sending to users more transparent, and used that to ask if the location sharing feature was at all problematic. I released the extension in May alongside a blog post discussing why leaving sharing on by default may be an issue, as users may not be aware of the amount of sensitive data it causes them to reveal over time. And this was when things got wild. So the week before I started my internship, my blog post went viral as tens of thousands of people began downloading Marauders Map to see for themselves what sorts of data their friends were sharing through Messenger. And of course, it wasn't long until Facebook got wind of this and reached out to me. They told me to deactivate the extension, which I did, but more importantly, they informed me that the location sharing default was going to be removed from Messenger. I was ecstatic about this. My code actually created change in a product used by hundreds of millions of people. Unfortunately, the story did not end there. Turns out, Facebook wasn't too happy about this whole Marauders Map thing, and I received a call the business day before I was supposed to start my internship, informing me that I no longer had a job there. Now, I was extremely disheartened by this, but I also thought it was a bit curious that this location sharing problem wasn't addressed earlier, given that it had been around and even criticized for years. I also wondered why what seemed like a reasonable discussion of a feature struck such a nerve with Facebook. So I began to look into Facebook's history with privacy issues and started to see a pattern emerge. Messenger's location sharing wasn't the first time default privacy settings caused a problem for the company. In 2010, Facebook switched the default visibility of all posts on their site from friends only to public, prompting a huge pushback from users, which eventually caused them to switch the default back. Mark Zuckerberg responded to the incident by stating, "We decided sharing would be the social norm now, and we just went for it." Now, like most other social platforms, Facebook's growth is driven in part by the idea of social proof. If users join and use a site publicly, other users will also join and use that site, and it will drive growth. If Facebook assumes that privacy is no longer a social norm, they will try to make sharing as easy as possible. And this will naturally nudge users into sharing more, and hence driving the site's growth and their profitability. So Facebook actually isn't the only one where this sort of phenomenon happens. In fact, most growing social platforms have incentives to design their sharing features in a way that push users into sharing as much of their personal information as possible. One of my favorite examples of this is from the peer-to-peer payments app Venmo, which has quickly become the most common way that college students are paying one another. Venmo allows users to share their transactions with others on a newsfeed, and of course, the default is to publicly share all transactions. So I decided to write another Chrome extension to aggregate these public transactions. It's called Money Trail. And it kind of was there to uncover what sort of things people were broadcasting to the world due to this default. The results were pretty surprising and kind of creepy. For most users, Money Trail showed who they were eating, drinking, and traveling with on any given day. It also uncovered who their best friends, roommates, and significant others were. Additionally, student organizations on campuses across the country use Venmo for things like dues and ticket sales, allowing Money Trail to generate a comprehensive list of their membership and track attendance at their events. Furthermore, many student businesses, such as our campus grill at Harvard, accept Venmo, letting me track things like when my roommates are binging on greasy late-night food, which incidentally gives me a pretty good idea of when to avoid the bathroom in my dorm. So why do Venmo and other platforms cling to these sharing defaults despite their invasive consequences? Well, as confirmed by Venmo's head of growth, sharing is their app's norm because the social proof it provides helps them grow. Because there hasn't been any public pushback against these sharing norms in Venmo and other social platforms, they persist, silently shaping how readily you give up your personal information. What I realized in doing projects like this is that even though people tend to take privacy for granted when using their apps, rarely if ever checking their privacy settings or reading privacy policies, they actually do care what information their apps are revealing about them. So, essentially, the way apps are designed makes it hard for us to actually get a handle on this. Any single piece of data, such as a public Venmo payment or a one-off geotagged message, may not seem like a big deal, but it's not always intuitive that when you add up this trail of data over time, you can get some very invasive insights. In an ideal world, any app that shares your data with others would come with a tool like Money Trail or Marauders Map so you could transparently see who knows what about you. Unfortunately, this is probably never going to happen. Your data is a valuable asset, and companies that are incentivized to grow their profitability and businesses in any way possible will leverage technology to make you share as much of that data as possible. Okay, so traditionally, in a case like this, when consumer and business interests are at odds, the government steps in to advocate for the public, and there has been some regulation to make it easier for users to get a sense of what apps are revealing about them. Notably, California's Privacy Protection Act requires all companies to have a clear privacy policy on their site describing what happens with user data. Unfortunately, this has definitely not been sufficient. In a survey done last year by LaTanya Sweeney, the former chief technologist of the FTC, her team found that almost all of the top 100 iOS and Android apps were sharing a huge amount of user data directly with third parties. Would you ever guess that a game on your phone about cutting up fruit called Fruit Ninja was sharing your location and medically related search terms from your device with strangers? Well, among other things, that's exactly what this team found. And uncovering that this sort of data was being extracted from users by hundreds of different apps required a lot more intensive work than simply reading the privacy policies. While in the face of all this, it may seem like a daunting task to get a handle on your privacy, for most apps, there is still one simple step you can take to better understand and limit your control. Spend a minute checking out the privacy settings in your apps, because I guarantee you there are going to be some boxes in there you want to uncheck. Unfortunately, because the regulations around privacy protection are still in their infancy, app permissions and privacy policies still aren't that useful, and effective privacy controls may not be included in your favorite apps. The reality is we are at a digital frontier, a new Wild West, and sometimes you have to take justice into your own hands. We have seen time and again, when people speak out against apps that don't respect their privacy, things do change. Unfortunately, right now, people feel there's nothing they can do to stop abuses of their private data, so they remain silent. This is a dangerous mentality because if we move forward, showing indifference towards our privacy, companies will continue to nudge us into giving up more and more of our private lives. Now, more than ever, we need to watch our apps as closely as they are watching us and share stories of privacy abuse. While apps may not yet be beholden to regulation, they are beholden to their users, and we must realize that we have the power to influence them, not the other way around. Thank you.